What is wood movement and how can it affect your woodworking projects? When you work with wood, it's important to understand the different ways that it can move. Wood movement isn't always easy to predict, and if you're not prepared for it, your woodworking projects can be ruined. In this video, I'm going to discuss what wood movement is, why it happens, and how you can compensate for it in each stage of your process. Wood movement refers to the way that wood changes in shape in response to the changes in temperature and humidity. This can happen both while the wood is being processed, during kiln drying, for example, and after it has been made into a finished product. Why does wood move? Wood is made up of cells, and the cell walls are held together by a substance called lignin. Lignin is what gives wood its strength and rigidity. However, lignin is also affected by changes in temperature and humidity. When the weather gets warmer and more humid, the lignin expands. Conversely, when the weather gets cooler and drier, the lignin contracts and the wood shrinks. This expansion and contraction of the wood is what causes the wood movement. How wood usually moves? Well, width-wise is the problem. The wood expands mostly width-wise and leastly thickness-wise. That's why woodworking joints are glued together while the wood is dry and can become less loose as the wood expands. Pieces will start to push to each other and push each other out of the way. If you think ahead of time of the way that the wood planks are laid out in most of your projects, that can be a big issue. If two boards are mounted flush next to each other and start to swell width-wise, they need to go somewhere. If they're mounted too tight, they're going to start buckling or popping out of your project. Outward swelling is one reason why woodworking projects start to warp. They can cause big gaps between boards or make already mounted boards start to pull away from each other. It can also cause wood to split along the grain if it's under too much stress. Lastly, wood can totally change shape due to the weather or humidity. A board that was straight when you started your project can pop up and twist very quickly. This is called warping, and it's one of the most frustrating things that can happen to a woodworker. Warping can cause all sorts of problems, from making it difficult to mounting pieces flushed against each other to causing your project to completely fall apart. Buckling, however, is when wood bends or curls due to the changes in humidity. It's similar to warping, but it can happen even if the wood is already mounted in your project. So, how can wood movement affect your woodworking projects? Well, wood movement can cause all sorts of problems in your woodworking projects. If you're not careful, wood movement can cause your joints to loosen, it can warp your wood, and it can crack your paint or finish. Furthermore, wood that has been improperly dried is more likely to experience wood movement, which can make your project fail even if you've done everything else correctly. Now let's talk about how to prevent wood movement. The best way to prevent wood movement is to use wood that has been properly kiln dried. Kiln drying removes the moisture from the wood slowly and evenly, which prevents the wood from warping or cracking. You can also use wood that has been air dried, but it's more difficult to find wood that has been air dried to the proper moisture content. Another way to prevent wood movement is to use a wood species that is less likely to move, such as cherry or walnut. There are also some woodworking techniques that can help to minimize wood movement, such as using floating panels or breadboard ends. Finally, you can use a wood stabilizer, which is a product that you apply to the wood to help prevent wood movement. So let's say you're getting wood movement already. How do you compensate for wood movement? If you're not able to prevent the wood movement completely, there are some woodworking techniques that can help you compensate for it. For example, you can use a spline joint instead of a butt joint to allow for wood movement. You can also use a loose tenon joint, which is a type of mortise and tenon joint that allows the wood to move without affecting the strength of the joint. Use wood screws rather than nails to assemble your project. This will allow the wood to expand and contract without affecting the joints. You can also use a wood filler or putty to fill in any cracks that may form as a result of the wood movement. Let's talk briefly about how wood moisture content can affect the wood. The moisture content of the wood can affect how much the wood will expand and contract. Wood that has a high moisture content will expand more than wood that has a low moisture content. So what's the difference between wood movement and wood shrinkage? Wood movement is the changes in the shape and the size that the wood undergoes as it absorbs or releases moisture. Wood shrinkage, however, is the changes in shape and size that the wood undergoes as it dries. So, my final thoughts. Wood movement is a natural process that occurs as wood absorbs or releases moisture. While you can't completely prevent wood movement, there are some woodworking techniques that can help you minimize its effects. That's all for now. Take care.